Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new Smite 2 video. Today we're going to be doing a tier list. In this tier list we got a couple of tiers. S tier for your best gods in the game, A tier for your average, B below average, C basically unplayable, and probably won't be using this bottom tier, so don't worry about that. But yeah, for this tier list, just kind of going to be looking at it from a ranked perspective to help you climb up in the new season. Also, we have a Vegas tournament coming up this weekend, which I will be kind of analyzing from my stream on Twitch and YouTube most likely, so make sure to check out that. And this tier list I hope will be a good indicator of, what will be good in that patch as well. Also to note, these gods in the tiers will be in order of how strong they are. So if the god is at the top of the tier, that means that they are better than the gods, in the same tier respective to it. And one final note for the A to Z series, because this is like a Super Smite 2 week, I may be delaying some of the videos a little bit. Don't worry if you don't see an A to Z series video tomorrow or the next day. I promise they are still in full force, still will be happening, but I might kind of increase the output of Smite 2 videos for like this week and then go back to Smite 1 every day with an additional Smite 2 video. So now that we have that out of the way, let's just kind of get started, and we're going to begin with Agni in the A tier. So Agni is one of the characters that just came out recently to Smite 2, and in terms of fluidity, he feels amazing. In terms of design and whatnot, he feels really smooth, but the biggest issue with Agni is his scaling is just not good enough right now. He's very dynamic. He has CC as a mage, which is very valuable. You can stun people. You have a knock-up immune dash. There's a decent level of safety, right, which is automatically going to be valuable. But because his scaling, late game, building full damage, you would expect to kind of be able to just sort of one-shot backliners or really easily win 1v1s. Uh, because his scaling's not great, you actually generally can't. His ultimate scaling is at 65%, which just isn't good. I think in Smite 1, it's probably at least 75%, maybe even 80. I'm not exactly sure on the numbers, but it comes to feel that you just don't do enough damage. You can still win 1v1s and still fight, just because you have so much like CC with stuns and you're burning and you're passive, but he just is a little underwhelming on the damage side. Once his damage numbers come up, expect to see him in S tier. Aladdin just came out today, was available in PTS. Haven't played too much of him, but is extremely valuable in the mid jungle flex. Any character that has so much value in terms of being strong in multiple roles is a drafting nightmare. I expect this guy to be permabanned for the Vegas tournament. Hopefully, we'll see him get in through a game or two. But ultimately, his ultimate is just way too powerful. It's very similar to like a Mordekaiser ult from League of Legends. You just get extremely buffed up in your ult, and the enemy gets weakened. You also have very good early game burst. You have insane late game damage as well. You kind of build this guy to full intelligence. You go a bunch of magical items, and those items are just so powerful in this game. Smite 2 kind of has an issue, or maybe just a quirk at the moment, where magical items tend to be a little bit better than physical items. So if you can build, a character that can use both, and you slate yourself towards those magical items, you're going to tend to do really well. And Aladdin just takes full, insurance in that. Really strong character. Best dash in the game. Super fun. We'll get a video on him soon, but all you need to know is that he's kind of in that golden cradle of, the top 4 or 5 characters in the game. Amaterasu, I'm going to put in the A tier. So Ama was dominating solo lane and Smite 2 as a whole recently, but with some of the nerfs towards her items, mainly Sunbeam Bow, shift towards skin size, as well as Braggy's Harp kind of falling a little bit out of the limelight. Amaterasu is still a strong pick. I'm going to put her above Agni, but not quite in the top echelon of solo laners. She's definitely been relegated back to being more of an objective burn slash team fighting solo laner who wants to scale up a little bit. The issue with being an objective burn solo laner in this game at the moment, or just being a supplementary burn character where, Amaterasu's value is typically I'm going to help my team shred people and shred objectives, is that right now objectives don't really need that help to be shredded. I think most objectives and towers and phoenixes and whatnot, especially the Titan, are just on a little bit on the lower end of their defenses, meaning the innate shred that Amaterasu provides is just kind of not needed. You're much better off in a lot of games just sort of picking a burst character in solo lane that can kind of just build a lead easier from level 1 to get more consistent results and wins, in my opinion. On her, this character is going to go to B tier, sadly. He's gotten some buffs. His aspect is definitely interesting. But right now, with the ADC meta, Bumba's Hammer is unfortunately still kind of domineering that role, and On her just doesn't use it as well as some of these other hunters. Again, I want to be clear, I don't think B tier is necessarily like bad. Uh, it's more kind of in like just below average, and C tier is really like what I consider a bad pick. So you can absolutely still play this character, but there's not really a huge reason to with a lot of the hunters available. Bumba's Hammer is super strong. You get that late game, it's a win con on most ADCs, and Anhur's just not one to use it that well. Also, you think of Anhur as a very, high pressure ADC. Hasn't really felt like that in Smite 2 in the same ways it's felt like it in Smite 1 at times in certain metas. I think he just sort of needs some, scaling buffs on his slow. Maybe his ultimate needs to just get like significantly buffed because for how slow it is, it doesn't really, in my opinion, pack the punch. So Anhur's going to just go right there in B tier. Anubis is going to go to the top of A tier. This character is still valuable in mid and solo and jungle, so triple flex threat, which is always good for drafting, but his kind of main like issue and the reason why he's, well, I guess issue I'm saying to say why he's good is his base numbers are really high. Very similar to Agni, who has good base numbers, but with Anubis, you can actually build him more defensive and still do a lot of damage. Agni's base numbers are good and they help him clear and stuff, but his scaling's not great. Anubis's base numbers are quite high and his scaling's still pretty good. So your pressure and lanes are really good. That Bumba's build that I showcased in my last Amaterasu video, which I really recommend you look at. You can do this start on Anubis solo and be very dominant with it. He's a lane pressure machine. Assuming he gets off to a good start, which is, again is not very difficult to do at the moment. And as a result, Anubis, yeah, just very good character, good pressure. I think again, magical items in general, defense, damage, whatever it might be, tend to be better than the physical ones. Not always, but for the most part. So magical characters as a whole in Smite 2 tend to be a little bit better. And you'll see a trend on this tier list that the magical characters overall will probably be ranked a little bit higher. Aphrodite, going to go to the top of A tier. I don't think she's quite an S tier, but she's very strong, better than Anubis for sure. This character is only a support in Smite 2. If you really wanted to play her solo, you could, but I really wouldn't recommend it at this current moment. Aphrodite has fantastic healing, immunity frames, obviously with her ultimate, the link, providing movement speed and damage increasing. It just means that Aphrodite can be a pocket support, as she's always been, very similar to like a Mercy in Overwatch or something, and just kind of sit next to someone and keep them alive forever. With a lot of backliners kind of running the game right now, and characters like Hercules really taking a rise in prominence, Aphrodite is like a perfect player or character to have on your team to just link to that person. And she's just really strong because of it. Not necessarily a frontliner support, but you don't necessarily need that. You can get your frontline elsewhere in your draft, and ultimately functions as a great counter pick, just having a free immunity. You pair her ultimate with a lot of active items like Stampede, Talisman of Purification, even in Screeching Gargoyle, and you just have so much more utility than a lot of characters in the game. So very good. Aries, unfortunately, will be going to the RIP tier. He is the worst god in the game at the moment. Um, it makes me sad. His chains just don't do the damage they did in Smite 1. He's quite weak. They tried to give him some buffs. They've changed his passive a little bit to kind of like give him like cooldown and stuff based on his magical power, aka intelligence. But you can't build power on this character because if you do, you die. And if you build a lot of defense, you still die. He doesn't feel nearly as tanky as he does in Smite 1. Um, that's not really like a numbers issue. It's just sort of the game. I think damage like spikes come differently in Smite 2, and Aries as a support really struggles. His soul lane is completely dead, unfortunately, as well with all these side additional camps coming in. His buff clear is just not good enough. His wave clear is terrible. And yeah, there's literally no reason to pick Aries. Talisman of Purification, the item you can build for beads. Yeah, the active item you can build for beads is still super good from a stat perspective, and just having a cleanse makes it super valuable. And then the final kind of nail in the coffin was Hussar's Wings, which just got added, which is a passive item that is 3,000 gold, really good stats, 40 prots of each, 300 health, and grants you immunity to slows. So Aries chains literally become obsolete. when people build that, and they do build it because it's a great stat item, is a little bit expensive, but it's definitely worth it. So Aries, literally just no angle, you can't play the character. Athena, I'm going to put at the top of B tier. You know, I was kind of somebody who put her always in D tier, right at the bottom. I was a big Athena hater. I think she's definitely improved, and I swayed my mind a little bit. I'm still not convinced that she's a top character. You can run her in jungle. I think that's actually probably her best role with a full damage build with Polynomicon. You have a lot of value in terms of damage with the build like that. And you're not really playing a CC, you're more so just looking to one-shot somebody with your Polynomicon autos. On your reach passive, it is very good. The problem with Athena has always been, like, if you run her jungle, you're a supplementary kind of engage, help a teammate jungler, which is kind of a weird playstyle. Even if you build full damage, you don't necessarily want to go look for 1v1s because a lot of junglers can still kind of just beat you. But she's definitely like a playable character, a good character. Her aspect is kind of bad, but it did get buffed a little bit. So I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend going it, but I think Athena's in like a decent spot. I think she's bordering right on A tier, and who knows, maybe like just a couple more good games of me seeing Athena would shift my mind. I don't really expect her to see her at this Vegas tournament, but maybe she will, right? Maybe I'll be a little bit surprised. This is one that I'm not 1,000% confident on. You could maybe make an argument Athena should be A tier. Bacchus, no argument in my opinion. I don't think Bacchus is very good anymore. He really dominated Smite 2 when the game came out, but I think the biggest issue with Bacchus at the moment is just that his numbers that made him so strong are significantly nerfed across the board. His first ability, his Chug, which used to give him a lot of power and just like on-hit damage and whatnot, I think was at 80% once upon a time. Now it scales up to 30%. So right now, I think Bacchus just kind of runs into that issue of like there's just better options. He's a pressure support, but there's better pressure supports. He's a frontliner, but there's better frontliners. He lacks the tankiness he had in Smite 1, and he was able to offset that in Smite 2 with pure burst potential, most of which he's kind of lost recently. I really just don't see a huge value point for Bacchus aside from the anti-heal he provides, but even then, characters like Sobek, even like Odin, just kind of do it better. Again, I don't think he's terrible. B tier still means he has a place of relevance occasionally in the meta, but by no means is he a top even 4 or 5 support, in my opinion. Baron Samedi, another character that also took a really deep dive recently, and I'm kind of struggling to rank him. He's a great counterpick character, and that's typically how he functions in Smite. Some of the problems is that anti-heal as a whole is not that great, which does benefit a character like Baron. I'm going to probably put him in A tier, but it's just really tough to kind of have a consistent profile on this character. He's great into gods like Emoja, who can be very powerful in the game, also quite good into gods like Aphrodite, because he's able to isolate them so easily, force their ultimates, or just potentially pull them on his own. The issue is sort of like Aries, he doesn't feel as tanky in his ultimate as maybe he should. That being said, I don't know, I'm still like not super convinced with Baron. I think like frontliner supports are valuable. You don't necessarily need them, obviously, with gods like Aphrodite, but I'm just not sure how I feel about Baron. He's really seen a huge downtick in play. I don't think the Baron's Brew is all the hype that people made it out to be. I'm kind of bordering on B tier for Baron, but I'm gonna say just because his healing application is still good and anti-heal is not that great, he may be somewhat limited in terms of a counter pick, but in the same breath, he also like kind of can't get his healing counter too hard. So he's at least like an okay character, and I'm gonna put him in average. Bellona. Bellona's a tough one. I'll be honest, since this recent patch, I have not seen Bellona one time, and I haven't played her yet either. But that's pretty concerning, to put it lightly. Now, sometimes you'll have characters that just don't get played because either people don't like them or they see an imposed nerf and they believe that it's much stronger than they would expect it to be. Bellona did not get touched directly, but some of her items, similar to Amaterasu, just got slammed a little bit. Now, does that kill Bellona, in my opinion? This is a lot more speculative because I really don't have the game play experience with it recently. But just with how the map has shifted in solo lane, and I don't think she's playable in jungle anymore. With how the map has shifted in solo lane, with Bumba's abuse being really strong and non-Bumba's abuse not being that strong, I'm not so convinced she's out of the game, but I just don't think she's very good. I don't really see a huge reason to play Bellona right now. I just don't think she does enough. She's functioning as a pressure pick, but she's going to lose pressure and scaling to a Hercules, to a Mulan, to a Mordred, even to an Amaterasu. Um, I don't think she's the worst though. Like she's definitely like okay. I'd probably put her at the bottom end of B tier. I don't think she's quite C tier. But yeah, Bellona, if you are a Bellona enjoyer, probably not your time. She's been okay in Smite 2 at times. Generally speaking, kind of on the underrated side, but this is a moment where I don't expect her to see play at Vegas, and I just don't think she's great. Cernunnos is going to come at the top of A tier. I'm trying to keep this S tier a little bit selective, so if A tier is a little bit maybe huge, just be mindful that the top end of A tier is probably closer to like an A plus realistically, or is just straight up an A plus. I'll try to make that distinction, but I apologize ahead of time. Kern's damage is great. His pressure is fantastic. He's a very versatile ADC. One of the better ADCs in the game, if not the best. It's kind of a debatable thing, but Hunters as a whole are just a little bit weaker than most classes right now. That being said, he's still very powerful. His shred is great. His aspect, although niche, has a lot of value in solo lane with proxy strats that don't always necessarily work. It kind of depends on the character he's playing against and the setup that's being created. But Cernunnos definitely does work. His pressure is really high. He can be limited with the aspect, but even without it, an ADC is super strong. Gives him flexibility in terms of what role you want to play him. Definitely a very strong pick, and expect to see it pretty consistently. Choch. I'm gonna put him in A tier as well, right behind Aphrodite. This is just a very stable, safe, strong solo laner. I don't think he has a lot of weaknesses. He probably does some stuff worse in terms of pressuring the map than other solo laners, but in terms of just creating an impact, being a safe character, having good damage sustain, and a very impactful, easy to use ultimate. I mean, especially for like brand new Smite players, this is like probably the top god I'd recommend for solo lane. Consistent, stable, everything you kind of need in a solo laner. We can kind of just move on. Cupid. Cupid's tough. He's between A or S. I'm gonna put him right behind Aphrodite, right ahead of Choch. Oh, whoops. Sorry about that. Cupid is very strong. His pressure is great. He doesn't have the safety you would imagine him to have, but it's kind of not mattered too much. His ultimate, being a cripple, means you can't blink while in Cupid ultimate, which is a very underrated aspect. It's the same case with Aries chains, but Aries sucks, so it doesn't really matter. But for Cupid, it kind of just becomes a convenience considering he's already a good character. Has a little bit of healing, which again, healing gods tend to be favored a little bit right now because the anti-heal components are just not in full swing, in full effect, in my opinion. So Cupid benefits. Pressure is really important in Smite. It kind of always has been, as it is basically in every MOBA. And when you have a pressure ADC like Cupid, the game just becomes easier. I think a little bit less versatile than Cernunnos just because of his aspects and just being able to play multiple positions and stuff. But Cupid's still really strong. When you do pick it, you know it's going ADC, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Definitely a really good pick. I do recommend playing it. Again, this is probably closer to that A plus side of things. I tried to add another tier. It was kind of breaking on this website. So just kind of believe that this is like a divider right between Choch and Cupid maybe. Danzaburo, pains me to say this, but he's going to be going into the B tier. Not quite into the C tier. I actually like him a little bit over Bellona. I think his damage is really good. His safety is okay. His ultimate has some quality of life changes which help it. I'm a big Danzaburo fan, but I don't really think he is worth the risks that he kind of has, where he doesn't have an instant dash like Cupid or Cernunnos. His utility and his ultimate is worse than Cupid and Cernunnos. And I think like what you'll find is that you can kind of build him like ability based with like intelligence items, and it feels good, but it's kind of awkward. Your pressure isn't all the way there. He just doesn't have the same consistent output that some of these ADCs have, and as a result, he just kind of is worse. Isn't bad. I don't think he's a terrible character, but I don't really see a huge reason to ever play him. Fenrir, we're going to put in the C tier. Fenrir was a very good Smite 2 character, and unfortunately, he sort of just fell apart. I think Fenrir's scaling got slammed, his lifesteal from abilities got destroyed, which is really interesting because healing as a whole hasn't been touched much, besides Fenrir. His ultimate and stuff like that just aren't really that good with how much purification beads, talismans people are going anyways, which is just, again, just a good item. Falls into really similar issues as Aries, and I just don't really see a point of ever picking a Fenrir at this current moment. There's just much better junglers. Support, his aspect is nice, but I still don't love it. Solo lane, he's completely out. No reason to play this character. So looking at Geb, this is a pretty easy one. I'm going to put him at S tier. He'll probably end up near the back end of it, but Geb's changes in Smite 2, where his Cataclysm ultimate does damage to objectives, is a significant buff just for a character that is typically considered low pressure to have. His passive, which got significantly nerfed, still has him taking reduced damage to auto attacks by I believe 5%. He still can't take more than 20% of his health from an ability. On top of the fact that he still has the reduced critical strikes hit. Passive effects, his passive is still significantly better even though it's been hard nerfed. His rollout got a gigantic buff, being able that you can hit things twice. You have that little mini knock up on the end. He's super fun. But I think Geb has kind of been reimagined. He's not necessarily this insta-losing, low-pressure support pick like he was in Smite 1. And because of that, his utility has always been immensely valuable. And when a character that has a defensive support kit somehow has pressure, it's a really crazy combo. And that, again, typically doesn't happen in Smite. And it doesn't happen for a very good reason. When it does, the characters tend to be a little bit game-breaking. And I think Geb right now is right on that line of being game-breaking. Speaking of game-breaking, Hades, right in that S tier. The Bumbus build on him, which is not nerfed to the point of irrelevancy, makes him easily one of, if not the best solo laners and junglers. His just pure damage potential is absolutely absurd. Polynomicon not having an internal cooldown means that after every single ability, you are able to proc Polynomicon with your next auto attack. Synchronize is fantastic into Hades' kit. His laning phase is pretty solid. Even if you don't decide to go Bumbas, you'll still have a good laning phase, and you'll actually have a better one in a lot of cases. But you're just able to kind of scale with this character. It is technically a little bit slow sometimes, but his mid game is really good. His late game is literally unbeatable in comparison to most characters, and he's just very strong. I think Hades easily tops the chart of this list right next to Aladdin for now. Hecate, hate to say it, think she sucks now. It breaks my heart. I'm going to put her at the top of C tier. The problem right now with mid lane is that low pressure mids get absolutely stuffed. There's nothing else really to be said or to be done about it. I've seen this story enough times now. She's an amazing character in terms of fun. She's an amazing character in terms of her ultimate, and her utility is great. Her kiting is super good. But all of that is contingent on can you get to late game. My opinion is right now, no way. There's way too many high pressure jungles and mids that have better clear and better level 1, better level 2, better level 3, and 4. And by the time she gets her ultimate, she's already probably behind, and as a result, I just don't think there's a world you pick Hecate. I love the character. She's unplayable in solo now, which also breaks my heart. In mid, again, is she playable? Yes, but there's just so many better options, and all is just contingent on pressure. I just don't think she's worth picking right now. This is one of the rare mages, in my opinion, that really is not too great at the moment. So, yeah, too bad. Hercules, right in the S tier. I know, bit of a shocker. We're going to put him right behind Hades. This character got a buff this patch to his passive. They made it 25% better. And I think that was actually all they did. And you might see this and be like, well, hey, Hercules solo is like good now. It's definitely playable, but doesn't seem OP. It seems a little dramatic, don't you think? And, I get the idea, but no, this isn't really for solo. And I think that's kind of the misdirection point. This is absolutely a jungle place thing. Hercules is probably the best jungle in the game, withstanding Aladdin. But even then, Aladdin does a different thing. So you can make an argument through playstyles that Hercules being able to initiate build full damage with Stampede, and just kind of 1v1 and kill everybody, and 2v1 and kill everybody, is more valuable than Aladdin being able to do the same thing, although being squishy. I'm not here to make the argument because I just don't have enough info on Aladdin in a competitive setting to make it. But these two characters are definitely the best junglers, Hercules, Aladdin. And yeah, he just kind of runs lobbies. It's miserable. It sucks to play against. Bombas is broken on him. Hercules solo is still good. Definitely not S tier, but it's still good. So you have flexibility. Hercules support, still also good. Definitely have flexibility. Super strong character. Going on to Mulan, I'm going to put her in the A tier. People are kind of low on Mulan. I don't think they see the value too much in her. People hate the consumable flag that she puts down. Me personally, I don't love it, but I think her damage is still quite good. I think her soul lane is very consistent. Having cleave autos really helps her level 1 clear, and it means that you can go that Bumbus build or just go like a Bluestone build in proxy. You just kind of build like full prots on this character as always. Having a grapple means great utility. You can go Sunder or Blink. Tend to recommend going Sunder, but her laning phase is very stable and consistent. She's able to play against most characters fairly easily. I actually would probably put her below Choch, by the way. I think this is maybe a little bit too high placed. I'd put her also below Anubis and Amma, but I think she's still like a good character, and I don't think there's any reason to avoid playing her. Izanami's really weird. She's not a safe character, and that's why people don't play her. But she gives a lot of lane pressure if you're able to walk up. I think right now you kind of just can't walk up in duo. And if you're playing against a Cernunnos or a Cupid or something, you'll kind of just like lose the trade. She's really bad into both those characters as well. I actually think she's extremely underrated and should be getting picked more. I'll put her behind Athena though, because I don't think she's proven. I'm also going to put on her above Bacchus, but um, I don't think she's proven that she can be really good at a high level. She just doesn't see the play, and when she does, it goes pretty bad. But I do think there's something with Izanami. I think there's a world where we see it come out as kind of a sneaky hidden tech pick, because her pressure is really good on waves, and her fight is still good. The problem is she just kind of struggles into some of these top ADCs, and so her 1v1s are pretty bad. But I'd love to see some Izanami games. I think she is definitely a bit of a sleeper, and we'll have to see with her. Jing Wei is going to go to the top of A tier. This character, in my opinion, is the best hunter in the game, withstanding one that's upcoming, or excuse me, two that's upcoming. Maybe not. Maybe I'm a little ahead of myself. She's very strong though. Her crit builds are fantastic. I think she's better than Cernunnos at this time. The crit builds are just very oppressive and strong. They scale super well. And whenever crit builds are going to be good, Jing Wei is going to be right at the top of them. The hunters above her are not crit hunters, is kind of the answer. So with the type of build that she does, she's the best at it. Her ultimate super buffed in comparison to Smite 1. Kit really strong, super safe. You basically have a teleport in your passive to lane, so you're always kind of able to reset really greedily or as often as you want, and you won't lose too much farm, which just means she's a stable, easy, consistent, safe pick that also has high damage and high crit output. So a bit of a scaler, but her early game's really not that bad because you can always back and come back. And I think she's just super powerful. Khepri. I'm going to put him in B tier. I don't think Khepri is all that great. I'm actually going to put him ahead of Bacchus, but not much higher than that. Khepri did get buffed a little bit. I'll put him actually above these two as well. But I'm just not super convinced about Khepri still. I think he's a backline support with better backline supports that counter him or do his job better in the game that exists. Obviously his ultimate is super valuable. His abilities after that, though, in my opinion, in Smite 2 don't feel as rewarding. I think his laning phase just doesn't feel as impactful as it does in Smite 1. Khepri, mind you, is like a top support in Smite 1, and I just don't really feel the same impact on this character. I don't know what exactly it is. Maybe it's the tankiness numbers. Maybe it's the scaling of like his abilities, or excuse me, the base damage of his abilities. I'm not 1000% sure what it is, but I'm just not feeling the same impact from Khepri as I did in Smite 1. I think a lot of it is probably just auras aren't really the thing in Smite 2. So in Smite 1, you just are kind of an aura bot with your ultimate, with all these protections you're giving, and when you don't have that much utility in that aspect, on Khepri in Smite 2, he just feels less impactful. Kukulkan has a similar issue to Hecate, but I think he navigates a lot better. I'm going to put him in A tier. I don't think he's the best, but his damage is fantastic, and the difference between, and I should actually probably put Agni below these two. The difference between Kuku and Hecate is he can abuse Polynomicon, so he actually does get online quicker, and he has a dash. That's very important. These gods have movement. The only mage here that doesn't have movement is Anubis. And that's okay because his damage output is super high, and you also don't need to play him mid. You can play him jungle or solo. Your top characters tend to have movement. It's just a very important thing to have, and Cuckoo has that now. So even though his early game might be a little bit lacking, his scaling is fantastic. Polynomicon is incredible on him, and he has movement and buff secure slash objective secure with his ultimate. So just a lot more versatile of a pick than Hecate, and I think he's able to survive these high pressure lanes a little bit easier, which is always very good. Loki is a tough one. He definitely used to be S tier. I'm not sure he is anymore. I think some characters have replaced him a little bit. I'm going to put him at the top of A tier behind Cernunnos and Jing Wei. He's still a very strong character. He uses Bumbas extremely well, of course, but I just think some of these aspect characters and some of these buffed characters like Aladdin, Hercules, even Gab getting better, which is a direct counter to Loki, kind of has just like forced him down. I think when you see this top end get nerfed, Loki will go back to S tier. There's nothing that's changed in the character. It's just some characters straight up have gotten better, and I feel like I can't flood the S tier too much because I still have a couple picks I need to put in. Which one of those will be Medusa? We're going to put Medusa right. I think right here. Sorry, I keep clicking on the character. I think right here is pretty good. I think she's probably like the fifth best character, just about. Um, Maybe a little bit lower. We'll see. I still have like 3 gods to add into S tier, just to say. So it is kind of like a big tier, maybe even 4. Um, but yeah, she's super good. You know, Medusa has extremely high pressure, and that's the big deal with her. Her pressure is fantastic. You can fight all the time. Mid, ADC, even jungle, doesn't matter. Bombas feels great on her. Her damage is again just way too good. Her passive being able to get like permanent power from kills with your statues just adds like another element to this character that she didn't even need, but just pushes her even higher. Medusa again is just a super pressure pick, very easy as well, which means the execution to play her well is low. I think that also like really benefits her in just performing consistently well. And Medusa is a character you can play literally every game. The imposed lack of safety doesn't matter when you just one-shot people. Um, well, I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter enough. So, yeah, easy S tier. Mordred, another easy S tier. I'm going to put him above Geb. The aspect in Soul Lane is just broken. He is a pressure machine. And you go Bluestone, you go like Soul Gem if you want. You could go Phoenix Shield, Glad Shield, that kind of stuff. You apply on hit effects. So every single little dash from your aspect is applying all of those effects, meaning your lane pressure is through the roof. I feel like you get his ultimate significantly faster now. I don't know if they tweaked it or that's just, you know, all these extra dashes means that, you know, you're applying more damage and you're getting your ults faster, but it feels like you can literally have your ultimate every single wave or every other wave at the very least, or every wave and a half. I think that's a you know good medium to put it at. And ultimately, that just means this character is insane. Pressure generator. He's literally a more problematic King Arthur, in my opinion, at the moment. Um, I think Mordred right now has an argument to be better than King Arthur ever was in Smite 1. It's close, in my opinion, but it is definitely doable to make that argument. So yeah, extremely oppressive, extremely hard to just hit in the first place, which means his fighting is just incredible. He does way too much damage, is way too safe. This aspect has literally made this god unbelievably powerful. I'm actually going to put him above Hercules as well because he doesn't even need to like get online to any degree, which Herc doesn't either much, but yeah, the character is just nuts. Definitely like a top 3, top 4 character. Neith. I don't know about Neith. Neith is weird. She really doesn't see a lot of play anymore. I don't think she's bad though. I'm gonna put her like right ahead of Baron. I think she just doesn't see a lot of play because like your games are kind of flooded with Medusas and Jing Weis and stuff. But she's a good character. Like, she just kind of doesn't see play because I think most characters are a little bit more special. But You can still play her. I mean, her ultimate's still valuable. Her clear is good. I think her aspect is actually really unique and cool. I'd love to see it used at this Vegas tournament. I'm not sure it will, but the aspect is you remove the roots from her weave, like kind of hits, like with her one, but you just gain attack speed instead. So she has a really good stim in her kit. It's like a strong stim too. Like I don't want to say it's like Kernabog level, but it's good. So gives her a lot of objective shred and burn, and I actually think this character is probably a little bit underplayed. It's just hard to make the argument because there's just so many good characters in the game right now that are like in the mid role or the ADC role, so she kind of just gets outshined, but she's still solid. Nemesis is a weird pick. I'm not really sure how to rate her either because she runs into the exact same issue as Neith, but she's not a bad character. I'll put her above Mulan. I think as a jungler, she has quite good value with her ultimate. I think her aspect is pretty helpful, although not necessarily like needed. It's just like a per game basis. Um, yeah, her abilities are strong. Her clear is pretty good. She's like a pseudo auto attacker, but you can kind of lean into like a pen style. You can easily slot in some defense, which is really nice for a jungler. And her 1v1s, obviously, in being Nemesis, tend to be on the better end, which does really help her against this top end of S tier characters. I don't think she has any world where she's better than any of these picks or even the picks ahead of her, but she's definitely still a good character. Nuwa is another mage that's pretty safe and she's just always valuable. I'm going to put her above Choch and Cupid. I think the issue with Nuwa is that even when she feels like she might not necessarily be thrust into the meta, there's enough good scaling items and abilities and stuff like that on active items that always make Nuwa's ult really impactful. And because there's not this many Aegises in the game or like shells and stuff like there were in Smite 1, Nuwa's always going to kind of have a prevalent place in the meta unless she gets significantly nerfed. Her minions are extremely strong as well. Um, Again, I think there are better mages to play at times, or just better mid laners, not necessarily mages to play. But her pressure is still okay, and most importantly, her damage is just so good. You go Archmages on this character, you go Soul Gem. I mean, that's just so many like stacked effects on your ultimate already. You go Dreamer's Idol if you want to, and you're going to just be hitting 600, 700 damage ults easily. So there's like never a world that's bad. And when you have like an ability to do that much damage to people without literally aiming, the character can just never be bad, unfortunately. So she'll be right there at the higher end of A tier. Again, I do apologize. I would probably put like an A plus divider like right behind or ahead of Choch, or maybe right behind Anubis. So A plus divider would put it right here. These gods post Amaterasu or ahead of Amaterasu are all probably A plus. Odin. Odin, I'm gonna put at B tier. I don't think he works in Solon anymore. He has been really hurt by these camp things being added and stuff. I think his farm is just a little bit too slow. I think Odin's kind of like the Jing Chen now of solo or something, where he kind of like has good team fight and stuff, but he just doesn't really like get there most of the time, or he shouldn't get there most of the time. He kind of just like loses into most of these top characters really easily, and his pressure is just not good enough to farm fast. I think that's a pretty simple one. Pele, also not very high on. I'm going to put Pele at the top of B tier, though. I think she's better on some of the picks. I'll put her behind Athena, actually. I'm not a big Pele fan. I don't think her changes have been great. She heals a lot, and her fight is quite good, but she gets outfought by these top characters super hard. And when a character's only ability is to fight, and she doesn't fight better than top characters, that also provides CC and damage. I understand it might seem a little harsh to put her in B tier, but I like Loki's fight over Pele. And again, all Pele can do is fight. She's not a great evasive character in terms of like split pushing and stuff, which at least like Nem and Loki can do. She can build defense, which I guess is nice for her, but her objective shred, which again isn't the most relevant, is still not as good as these characters. Her utility in terms of like, being able to apply a debuff like Loki does, or apply a debuff like Nemesis does, just isn't there. I just don't see her being in the same tier as even these gods in terms of the jungle role, and I definitely don't see her even close to S tier. So Pele pretty low on. Poseidon got nerfed significantly. He was super good. I'm not a big Poseidon fan. I'm actually a pretty big Poseidon hater. I'm gonna put him right above Pele, but I just don't think he's very good. I don't know. I can't be convinced that this character is sick. I know he uses Bumbas very well. Maybe in jungle there's an avenue where he's really good, but he can just kind of get jumped on by so many characters that I just don't see the value. I don't know. Maybe that's just like a huge L on my end, but Poseidon has just not clicked with me as being very good recently, so I've been staying away from him. Ra, we're gonna put in S tier. Thinking where? I think we put him behind all of these gods, maybe. This is because of his solo lane play. His aspect is really good, and the pressure that you can exert even with the aspect is still strong, but late game you're an absolute menace. I think this is actually an okay spot to put him. But his scaling is just super strong, not in terms of power, but just in terms of like his value. It like exponentially, it feels like rises as the game goes on. And his early game can be a little bit punishable depending on your solo lane build. His mid lane is still pretty valuable. You don't even need the aspect to be good on this character, but it is nice. I think this character is super strong, but not like necessarily the best character, but definitely deserving of S tier. I do like him here. We have one more S tier god for sure. We might have two. So this S tier is getting kind of bloated. And it's important to note that the S tier is bloated. And I'm saying that to say the game is not really in the most balanced sense, which is really fun for casuals. It's really fun for ranked at times, not always, but at times. But competitive is going to be a very weird dynamic. I think this competitive Vegas tournament is going to be an absolute disaster for drafting. I think everybody's going to have a couple of OP picks. I know you could make an argument, well, if a lot of stuff is OP, doesn't that mean that like some things are devalued? Personally, I just don't think so. I think these characters are so clear-cut better above these A tier characters that like it's not even an argument you can really make for the most part. So I don't really know. Sobek, I'm gonna put him. Ooh, actually, Sobek's tough. Is he an S tier god? It's close. No, I don't think so. I think he's like slightly below. I'll put him at the very top of A. This is a tough one. Sobek's bordering on S tier, but I'll put him at the top of A. This god is still a pressure support, and that's always important. I think because of gods like Geb and Yamoja that he's not necessarily bad into, but just like being good, his value were traditionally, I think before maybe Sobek was like artificially pumped up a little bit because there didn't feel like there were good enough support picks to match it, is kind of waning. You know, I think like you can play Baron still and do pretty okay into him. I still think you can pick, um, you know, like gods like Yamoja and even Ymir and still do okay. And obviously Geb now being in the game is solid. I think Sobek's like right there. You can definitely make an argument that he's there. It's hard to argue against it, I guess. Maybe I'll put him there just because I feel like there's a lack of supports that are quite as good, but they're like close. Again, because this is A plus. Here, let's just do that now. Can I just do that now? After Anubis. Okay. That worked. Okay, it wasn't working yesterday. There was another thing that wasn't working. I apologize. If I can just create a divider, I will right now. So let's do this actually. Add a category below. Oh my gosh, it works. Okay, guys, this literally was not the case yesterday. I'm sorry. Because I was trying to trial test this video yesterday and it didn't work. So I can actually just do this. Okay. Oh, look, see? This thing was happening. All right, well, let's see. Maybe it'll get fixed. A plus A. I hope that doesn't last. It's really annoying. Oh, no, it got fixed. Okay, cool. This did not get fixed yesterday, I promise. So let's move these characters down. Wait, sorry, I'm doing it backwards. Oh dear. 1 second, 1 second. This is a disaster. Okay. We had it like this, and now after Anubis, these characters are in A tier. Here we go. Okay, so now when somebody skips to the end, it's going to look all nice and pretty. And if you stuck here with me, you're just the GOAT. Oh, but you got punished for it, so unlucky for you. Do I want to put Neith above Baron? I actually think because Neith has like more perspective, mid laner's better than her, and Baron has less, I'd put Baron above. But I guess I could do the same with Cuckoo. Yeah, I'll do it. Okay, cool. Back to, I can also do it with Mulan as well. Yeah, okay, here's a little bit better. I think I'm like realizing how few supports there really are in this game in comparison. This looks good. Let's continue. My battery's low. That's fine. We've got time. Soul is also, you want to guess where? Terrible, right at the bottom. The two fiery characters are garbage. I don't really think there's much to say about this god. Is she better than Aries? I don't know. Would I ever play either of these characters? Absolutely not. Um, yeah, her damage sucks. Her scaling is not that great. Her early game is actually pretty good, but she falls off a cliff. Her safety's terrible. Why play Soul when Jing Wei exists? Why play Soul when Medusa exists? Why play Soul when Kern exists? Why play Soul when Cupid exists? Literally zero reason. The only argument you can make is that, well, he's a magical god or she's a magical god and we need magical damage in our drafts. Why? I just don't see it. Like, there's no world you can't just pick a magical soul laner like Geb, like Hades, like Sobek, like um, even the Morrigan or something like that. There's still good mages in the game, Raw solo as well. There's literally no reason to be like, I need magical damage. You don't. You'll probably get it somewhere else and it'll be much better. So yeah, just don't play her. Also Zeus, forgot about him. He's coming up. Susano is going to be at the back end of A tier. I think this character is nice for fighting, but his 1v1s aren't as good as they used to be. He got nerfed a ton. He exists mostly as a counter pick now, but when your top end is all these characters, and Ra is not a squishy god, mind you, he's a tank full defense Ra, and Medusa can just one-shot you. I just don't actually think Susano like really fits in the game, which is sad because he's fun. Um, but yeah, like when you look at this S tier, what god is Susano good here? Good into here? None of them. He's supposed to be good into Hades. He's supposed to be good into Medusa. He's supposed to be good into Ra. But with the build's strength and just scaling of these characters, he's not. Even A plus tier. Which of these gods is he like significantly like considered strong into? I guess Nuwa, but that's it, really, right? Like Anubis, no. Sobek, no. Choch, definitely not. Loki, definitely not. Aphrodite, no. Jing Wei, not a chance. Cernunnos, I guess, but like, I don't know. I just feel like he's just not good into these characters. I don't think he's a bad character, but he's so bad into the top end of gods in Smite. Like, Susano is great into like Hecate and Izanami and Danzaburo, but look where they are. So I think that's kind of unfortunately the case with him. Thanatos, I'm going to put him in A plus tier. I'm going to put him right behind Cupid. I think he's pretty good. His aspect is nice. I don't think it's like game breaking. Um, you don't need the aspect. I think him in jungle is still like pretty strong. Execute's always going to be valuable. I think if you do see this god played at Vegas, it'll be by Rat Milk. This is like his bread and butter pick. And I don't know. I think it's a good character. I don't think he's like game breaking with the aspect. I think he's kind of just overshadowed in solo by Mordred, Hades, Ra. And he is overshadowed in jungle by a couple of picks, but his value is still really high. I still like him. I think his early game is amazing. I think his late game is still great. Um, and yeah, Thanatos feels good. Definitely recommend playing him still. Maybe not your very top end, but I mean, he's close enough that you have to think about it. There's 4 bands in a game. 4 of these characters are going to be gone. Let's say it's Aladdin, Mordred, Hercules, and Medusa. He's right up there with being your best junglers at that point, right? So definitely can and should look to play him. The Morrigan is going to be our S tier addition. There might be one more. We'll see. But her competitive value, I think, overreaches her ranked value. I'm actually going to put her higher than this, by the way. We're going to put her right ahead of Hercules. The big thing with the Morrigan is obviously invisibility is super strong, and the aspect of being an instant teleport is super strong. So either way you slice it, that third ability is incredibly powerful. You also have to look at Polynomicon being no internal cooldown, very similar to why Kukulkan is relevant, why Hades is really good. Same thing with Morrigan. And on top of that, her ability to ult as somebody and steal their relic and be able to use it during the ultimate duration. So if you turn to Aladdin, you can use Aladdin's relic. So let's say you're ulting into Aladdin, you can blink in an Aladdin ult and use your whole kit and all that stuff. It just makes her so powerful. I mean, the ability to just have a second relic effectively in a game when there's only one relic is just game breaking, quite frankly. Again, it might not be utilized as well in ranked, especially by lower end players, because the character is like a little bit awkward to play if you just like don't love her. But she feels, honestly, I think really smooth and much easier than in Smite 1 just because she's so much better. Her pressure is amazing in waves. Her mid lane pressure is great. She's playable in ADC. Jungle, I haven't seen much of her, but I couldn't really imagine why she wouldn't work. And her solo lane pressure is also very good. So she's super dynamic. You can play a bunch of roles with her, and her competitive value is really what drives her up here. I think this character is going to be highly contested in this Vegas tournament. Thor is very disappointing, but he's still Thor, and that makes him really tough to rank. I think his damage is not what it should be. I think his power is just not what you would expect, even when you really lean into damage, which is what you do as a jungler. So that means you have to play him in solo more often than not, despite how much utility he has. Now, you could build him like tankier in jungle, but I don't really know how that would look, and I don't really see it enough to say it would be good. I don't think it would be good, just like knowing what I know about the game. Um, so you're better off probably building him more tanky and solo. And the problem is that even though Thor solo is improved from Smite 1, which got gutted at the end of the game, I still don't think it's that great. Because there's so much farm, and other characters can kind of just farm faster. I don't really know why you would play Thor solo over Hercules or Hades or Mordred or Ra or even Choch. I think he's an A tier. Now, I think he's the best of A tier, but I actually think Thor's like not going to be this huge earth-shaking pick at this tournament or in this beta, which definitely is a little bit sad because he is so much fun. I think ultimately when solo lane farm gets reduced a little bit and some of the snowball and kind of cheese in the game gets shifted a little bit, I think Thor will slowly kind of quietly climb back up. But ultimately, the easiest way to change this character and make him better is just increase the scaling. I don't know why you can build damage on Thor and not one-shot backliners because you just can't half the time. It doesn't make any sense. This god's supposed to be able to one-shot you. If you ult on somebody, you auto-attack, throw your double tap out, hit the double tap, hit your wall, auto-attack between that, and use your 3 with your lightning and all that stuff, you should be able to kill somebody. That's just my opinion. Right now, he can't do that consistently. But even then, his utility, just in terms of the stun, makes him at least an A tier character. Uller is our last S tier, and this tier is getting freaking inflated, and this is kind of why you can see why this Vegas tournament is definitely going to be a unique thing to have. We're going to put Uller ahead of Medusa? I think so. Ahead of Hercules and Geb? I think so too. I'll put him right there. That feels pretty good. Uller is really strong. I mean, he utilizes Bluestone super well, obviously, which isn't the best thing in the world, but it's still good. You can go Bombas on this god. It's broken. He has all his abilities up because of his passive, and his damage is just higher than in Smite 1, to put it simply. He just feels better than Smite 1 Uller in terms of fluidity as well. So when you have a high skill ceiling, but also very high outplay potential and, kind of like just damage burst character that feels better and does more damage, um, look at where you're going to go. You can play him mid ADC and solo, and he'll win almost every lane in all 3 of them. So that's kind of cut and dry for Ruler. Yamoja I'm going to put behind Sobek, right at the top of A plus tier. Put her, yeah, right there I think is good. Sorry, I keep doing that. Her pressure is great. Her damage is good. Anti-heal is tough to build. I'm just not so sure she's up at this S tier just yet. Like right now, in my opinion, when I see Ra with the aspect, I'm like, man, we're gonna lose. When I see Emoja, I'm like, okay, we can still win. That's kind of like the difference. Now, yes, Ra's at the bottom end of my S tier, so am I like kind of tongue in cheek with that? Yeah, a little bit. But I just don't feel the same impact from Emoja right now as I do these other gods. I understand you might make the argument, well, hey, she's more of a competitive character than a ranked character, therefore you should put her up here in the same way you put the Morrigan. But I just think the Morrigan, through pressure, is just a little bit more versatile. And Yamoja, although she'll probably be a very consistent support pick, is less because I think she's an S tier god and more so because Geb is going to be banned most likely. And then one team will pick Sobek, or Sobek might even be, he probably won't be banned, there's not enough time or space. But Sobek will be picked, and then you're kind of picking like Yamoja there or Aphrodite. and they kind of do the same thing. So it might just be like which one you like. A lot of the supports, like genetics, are like huge Emoja fans. That's like probably his best character. So I just expect to see it more so because of that rather than the character being intrinsically like an S tier god. Ymir is a solid support, but nothing crazy anymore. I'm going to put him like in A tier. I think that's like a very comfortable spot for him. Still has CC, no DR in this game, means he's always going to be pretty valuable. Put her right above Baron and them. But I don't think he necessarily like breaks the game or anything. I think he's just like a good character and nothing much crazier than that. And Zeus as our final pick. I've seen Tegvir run this a ton. That's on the team with the Globe team. And it looks really good. This character is still really strong. I think people have kind of forgotten about him because he's been thrust out of the limelight by a lot of these picks rising, but he's still an A+ character. I'll put him right behind Cernunnos. I think this character will be picked a lot. His pressure is insanely good in mid, and he's even playable in jungle. I hate the design of the god, but besides that, I mean, from a pure numbers perspective, it's just unignorable. You can build like shifters and Warriors X as your starter, and then just build full damage and crit and literally auto attack people for 1,000. I'm not kidding. So that is, yeah, that's a bit of a problem, right? He doesn't have CC immunity, which I guess is like bad. I don't really think that like makes or break a character, as obviously Ullr's up here. But I guess like his range is worse than like Ullr and stuff. That's kind of like what pulls him out of the S tier. I think most of these characters have a bit more range or just uh like potential to be top picked in a draft. But Zeus is still really strong. And with that, that's going to be the tier list. I've yapped enough, I think. So S tier up here, this is your always pick ban these characters. A+, mostly pick ban these characters. With how many gods are here, you really never need to go lower than S and A+. Again, I've never seen Smite at such an unbalanced state in terms of characters, which is saying something because there's so few in the game in comparison. A tier is your average / like good. When I've called a lot of these characters good, so they're definitely not bad, but good, average, kind of nice stuff. This is like you play these, you're pretty happy. B tier, they can work, but a little niche / like not reliable and just not really worth picking. C tier don't play. It's just not their time, and RIP tier is just their trash. So that is the tier list. Let me know what you guys think. If there's any disagreements, please let me know. I've got Smite 2 gameplay for Joust, Duel, obviously Aladdin stuff, more solo lane play-by-plays as I always do, coming up very soon. So if you want to kind of learn how to play the game, as well as just off-roll stuff too, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you hate, what you love. I know there's going to be a lot of heat in these comments. I'm ready for it. And that'll be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.